What is going on? Putting Mom in a storage shed. Oh, that. I just got tired of taking care of her. I can't help it, okay? What? Are you kidding me? When I went to my mother-in-law's house to take her to the hot springs, we found her trembling in the storage shed in a pitiful state. I was speechless at my sister-in-law's inhumane actions and the appalling conditions she had subjected my mother-in-law to. Little did I know that divine retribution was about to befall my sister-in-law. I am a 46-year-old housewife, and my husband is also 46. We have a son who recently moved out to attend college in another state. I had expected him to attend a local university and live with us for a few more years, even after starting his career. However, children often leave the nest earlier than their parents anticipate. Unexpectedly, my husband and I found ourselves with more free time, just the two of us. How about we go on a spa vacation this long weekend? My husband suggested. Lately, he's been coming home early, likely due to recent changes in the work culture. He also seems to be going out for drinks a lot less. That sounds wonderful, I replied. Our first trip alone since our honeymoon, right? Not just vacations. I can't even remember the last time we went out to eat, just the two of us. It's been that long. Yeah, but how about inviting your mom this time? I suggested, surprising my husband. Although we're both in our 40s and still physically capable of taking care of my mother-in-law during the trip, we've declined her invitations multiple times since our son started grade school, often using parenting as an excuse. My husband had also been declining due to work commitments. Without opportunities like this, we might grow distant from her. After I explained my reasons, my husband agreed. My mother-in-law currently lives with my sister-in-law and her husband, so we decided to reach out to her. I thought it might be better handled between women, so I called my sister-in-law. Perfect timing, she said. We were about to go on a trip and didn't know what to do with Mom. Luckily, I found someone who can take care of her. We were on speakerphone because my husband wanted to speak to his mother. When my sister-in-law made her self-centered comment, he was livid. Hey, what the hell do you mean by that? He demanded. Oh, would you look at the time? We're going to miss our flight. My sister-in-law brushed off his concern, emphasizing her own busyness and abruptly ending the call. What the hell is my sister doing? Is Mom okay with her acting like that? My husband fumed. The excitement of reuniting with his mother after so long was overshadowed by growing anxiety. We need to go there right now, he declared urgently. The in-laws' house is situated in the same city, though our neighborhood is a newly developed area that has expanded over the last 2 decades. In contrast, the vicinity around their home still boasts houses dating back to the 1920s. Although my sister-in-law and her husband moved in with my mother-in-law and renovated the house, it retains an old-world charm. After a 20-minute drive, we arrived at the in-laws' house. We could see the roof, but the front door was locked, and our attempts to call and knock went unanswered. I tried reaching Lisa to inquire about a spare key, but couldn't get through. Our anxiety grew as we frantically searched around the mailbox, under plant pots, and in other possible spots for a hidden key. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure. John was exploring nearby when he also noticed it. Could she be in here? He murmured, peering into the shed. Then he shouted in shock. I hurried over and found my mother-in-law wrapped in cardboard, shivering uncontrollably. Mom, I exclaimed. She was barely dressed, barefoot with disheveled hair and a pale face. Her skin looked dry, and there was an unsettling odor. Her appearance was less concerning than her well-being. How long had she been left in this state? We need to warm her up quickly. I know, damn it. Should we break the window to get in? John suggested urgently. Hold on, what about the backyard window? It might be open, I proposed. The backyard was shielded from the street, offering a chance that they might have forgotten to secure it. John hurried over and, as I had hoped, found the window unlocked. He entered the house, unlocked the front door, and brought his mother inside. From then on, we operated with seamless coordination, like a well-rehearsed team. I warmed the room while John wrapped her in blankets. I changed her clothes while he prepared the bath. As I bathed her, he readied the bed, and together we settled her in. Oh, it's so warm. It's like heaven, his mother murmured, closing her eyes as she seemed to drift off to sleep. Your mom should have a family doctor at her age, right? I suggested, contemplating the urgency of the situation. We needed medical assistance but couldn't locate her room. As I searched for a change of clothes for her, I couldn't shake an uneasy feeling. It became evident we were facing a life-threatening scenario, prompting me to borrow clothes from Lisa. Despite her extensive wardrobe, none of the clothes seemed suitable for my mother-in-law. We scored for her insurance card and prescription information to no avail, leading us to search online for a doctor who could conduct a home visit. Once secured, John promptly alerted the authorities. Upon arrival, the doctor emphasized the critical timing of our intervention. Delay could have been disastrous, especially given the severe winter conditions and the potential for snow in the mountains. The examination revealed signs of malnutrition and dehydration from severely limited food and water intake. Additionally, her neglected living conditions had caused a distressing skin rash and even lice infestation, a shocking development in modern times. The doctor prescribed medications and urged us to arrange a follow-up with her regular family doctor as soon as possible. As we searched for her insurance card and essential items, we came across the contact details for the caregiving service that had been responsible for her well-being. Luckily, it was still saved in the home phone's contacts. Recognizing the urgency of the situation, we reached out to understand what had transpired during the period we were preoccupied with our own lives. After contacting the service, we learned that Lisa had abruptly terminated the contract without prior notice, leaving them unable to intervene further. The caregiver expressed genuine concern for my mother-in-law, mentioning occasional bruises that hinted at possible domestic abuse. They had attempted to address this delicate issue with Lisa, but she had evaded their inquiries. Years of daily abuse? Was my mother enduring this? John exclaimed angrily. Damn it. Yes, we were overwhelmed when our first child arrived, but that doesn't justify neglecting my mother's welfare. I deeply regretted interpreting my mother-in-law's words. It's okay, it's okay. As a mother, it's natural that your child comes first, as mere reassurance. Looking back, our frequent invitations for us to visit may have been cries for help, a plea to escape Lisa's mistreatment. Voicing my regret, I confessed to my husband, who reassured me, it's not your fault. I'm equally responsible, if not more so. Now, only Lisa and her husband hold the truth. We won't know for sure until we hear it from them, but Lisa is capable of such actions without remorse. Anticipating potential disputes over what was said or omitted, we decided to record all our future phone conversations. Lisa reluctantly answered the phone, sounding annoyed to be interrupted during her vacation. However, when my husband raised his voice, she begrudgingly began to speak, her tone flat and detached. I listened intently to the conversation on speakerphone. My mother's forgetfulness was really starting to grate on my nerves. I got so frustrated and just gave her a little shove, but she happened to be standing at the top of the stairs. She tumbled down like a sack of potatoes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lisa was referring to her own mother as a sack of potatoes, and her tone suggested she found it somewhat amusing. Then she couldn't get up on her own. I knew it was serious, but I was just so tired of dealing with everything, so I decided to put her in the shed. Lisa continued casually. You know how you store things you don't need or can't use in the shed? It's like that, she added, laughing. It was clear that Lisa was treating her own mother like an object, dismissing her as useless despite the fact that she had given birth to her and raised her. The selfishness of her attitude made me feel physically ill. The caregiver doesn't know about this, so it's fine. Just make sure nothing unnecessary happens, okay? It dawned on me then that Lisa understood the severity of the situation after she pushed her mother down the stairs, which led her to abruptly cancel the caregiving services. She spoke callously, saying things like, as long as she has water, she'll be fine for a week, and if she starts wandering around, we can just tie her up. It was horrifying and utterly unbearable to hear. Oh, and you guys should cooperate too. If things keep going like this, she's going to die from weakness. If she does pass peacefully, I'm considering sharing some of the inheritance with you guys. Not a bad deal, right? Lisa's tone conveyed a chilling belief in her flawless plan, punctuated by an unsettling laugh. Her proposal defied all reason and veered into madness. Listening to Lisa, I felt a deep unease as though she herself were a dangerous weapon. Fear gripped me and I couldn't stop shaking. Meanwhile, my husband handled the situation calmly, allowing Lisa to explain without immediate objection, merely nodding along. He ambiguously responded to her plea for cooperation, neither fully accepting nor rejecting it. His strategy was to lower her defenses and encourage her to return home. Unbeknownst to Lisa, the police we had alerted had already arrived at her location and were monitoring our phone conversations. They instructed us to extract as much information as possible from her and to prevent her from escaping by feigning agreement with her plans. John, my husband, seemed poised to denounce and condemn Lisa's actions outright. I couldn't bear to witness the anguish on his face again, the strain of suppressing his emotions while listening to Lisa. I fervently hoped we would soon emerge from this sorrowful ordeal. Unaware of our collaboration with the police, Lisa and her husband enjoyed their vacation to the fullest. Exactly 1 week after we discovered their mistreatment of my mother-in-law, they returned home. As Lisa spoke about her mother, I casually inquired about their return schedule. Little did they know, the police were waiting to apprehend them upon their arrival. An arrest warrant had already been issued, and they were taken into custody as soon as the document was presented. What's going on? You're my own brother, selling out your sister to the cops? What a lowlife you are. And you cops, watch where you're touching me. I'll sue you, mark my words. Lisa, a middle-aged woman, spat out her words like a washed-up thug. John regarded his sister with a mixture of disdain and disappointment. The real lowlife here is you, John retorted calmly. Hey officer, that guy, my brother, he's a sly fox. Always been a liar with a honeyed voice, Lisa continued, attempting to smear my husband's reputation. She then boldly asserted, Mom has been suffering from dementia for years. No matter how many times I explain it, she insists the storage shed is her home. Isn't it better to let her do as she pleases? Even doctors say that yelling at dementia patients only makes things worse. But we already had Lisa's confession recorded. When John played back the phone conversation, Lisa and her husband paled visibly and sank to the ground. From now on, you'll be behind bars. We've already completed the necessary procedures while you were away. Don't act so superior, dumping the responsibility of that helpless old woman on us. You have no right. You insisted on remaining childless so you could care for our aging parents instead. It was you, Lisa, who asked us to forfeit our share of the inheritance. My husband said calmly. It seemed this was an arrangement they had made before John and I were married. You were the one who broke the pact first. If it was too much for you, you could have told me. That would have been fine with me, John said with a choked voice, expressing his readiness to care for his parents. Lisa's initial plan was to care for her mother in exchange for claiming all of the inheritance. However, her mother unexpectedly remained resilient and lived longer than expected. Unable to tolerate this, Lisa devised a plan to make her mother's passing appear natural due to frailty. As for the ownership of the family home, it remained in their mother's name since their father's death. Fortunately, the property was not in Lisa's name. Therefore, we decided to demolish the deteriorated family home and convert it into an empty lot. We plan to sell the lot later. The demolition date has already been set, so please remove your personal belongings as soon as possible. You must be joking. I'm under arrest, you idiot. How am I supposed to do that? We've rented a storage unit for 3 years to store your belongings. It will be paid for from your savings, John informed Lisa. What? Who gave you the right to make decisions on your own? You used to be a crybaby, always running to your big sister. Now suddenly you've grown a spine. Lisa raged, incensed that John had taken charge of her finances. Despite her protests, John remained composed. He added that if the lease couldn't be extended after 3 years, they had the right to dispose of the contents. Lisa could only stare in disbelief, unable to argue. It was a clear victory for us. The police intervened, declaring that enough had been said. They escorted Lisa and her husband into a waiting police car. Resisting until the last moment, they were carried away like uncooperative luggage. In the days that followed, the demolition of our parents' house proceeded smoothly. It turned out that my mother-in-law had not been suffering from dementia after all. Her forgetfulness was simply a part of aging, a common experience that doesn't typically inconvenience others. I too sometimes forget what I was about to do, only to recall it later. Similarly, my mother-in-law was like that. Thanks to her, Lisa had no legal grounds to contest the decision to demolish the house, as my mother-in-law was the rightful owner. Since Lisa and her husband didn't retrieve their belongings from the house, we proceeded with the demolition, leaving their possessions inside. Now they are incarcerated. It appeared they were unaware they could have preserved their belongings by making appropriate arrangements such as hiring a company to move them with the assistance of a court-appointed attorney. Their actions became widely known after being featured on television in a segment titled True Stories That Seem Unbelievable, likening their behavior to a modern-day abandonment of elders. Subsequently, Lisa and her husband were charged with elder abuse and neglect by the authorities responsible for their protection. They were found guilty and are likely to face a significant period of incarceration. We successfully sold the vacant plot for a substantial sum. In addition, we decided to sell our current house, located in a highly sought-after area, which fetched a good price even as a used property. With these funds, we built a new home for the three of us, including my mother-in-law, in a location where we envision spending our elderly years comfortably. The new house is single-story and designed to be elderly-friendly, situated in a town with convenient bus services and excellent care facilities. Since moving, my mother-in-law has shown remarkable improvement in her health. She walks with a straight posture and faithfully performs her daily morning exercises. She now enjoys gardening with me, tending to our vegetable patch every day. Soon, we'll be enjoying the fruits of our labor together at the dinner table. Constructing your own home stands as a monumental achievement in life's journey. But for me, Adeline, aged 30, this milestone was a harbinger of sorrow, marking the crumbling of my marriage. My family unit comprised my 35-year-old spouse, Yuri, and our cherished 3-year-old Sarah. The vision was clear: to erect the dwelling of our dreams. Eagerly, I shared our aspiration with my loved ones, yearning for their support, anticipating smooth progress. Yet reality proved harsh. While others may sail through such endeavors seamlessly, my path diverged. Recent times have been fraught with obstacles in materializing our dream abode, compounded by interference from Yuri's parents. The unraveling commenced on a fateful day when I entrusted Sarah to their care. Yuri and I, slaves to our professions, scarcely savored moments together in the week. Our weekends were devoured by property tours and consultations with architects. Bringing Sarah along proved futile. Her restlessness eclipsed the joy of exploration. Thus, we relied on my parents, conveniently close by, to tend to her. Then came the morning when their news shattered my routine. My father's ailment mandated a hospital visit, rendering them unable to care for Sarah. There seemed no alternative. Our plans for the day hung precariously on the edge of cancellation. Yet, in a surprising turn, my husband proposed, why not ask my parents to look after her? His suggestion stirred an unexpected turmoil within me, the prospect of discord looming. Truth be told, my relationship with my in-laws was strained. They possessed a notion that familial ties equated to unchecked liberties. Since when was such behavior permissible? Moreover, burdening them with the sudden responsibility of caring for a toddler felt intrusive. However, postponing our plans risked stalling progress on our dream home. After much internal debate, I relented, leaving my daughter in their care. Once my errands were done, I sought to ease any potential tensions, purchasing lavish treats and tokens of appreciation before returning to their doorstep. Perhaps swayed by my gestures, my in-laws welcomed us warmly, expressing gratitude for the gifts as we bid our farewells. Yet on the journey home, I overheard my daughter's innocent chatter. I'm going to get a new house, she declared, her voice brimming with excitement, before inquiring, where will Grandma and Grandpa's rooms be in the new house? Oh, Sarah, what are you saying? Did Grandma and Grandpa ask you about their rooms? What did you tell them? I probed gently, noticing her reluctance to speak further, her gaze fixated on the stuffed penguin cradled in her arms. Oh no, she murmured, a hint of uncertainty clouding her features. Sighing softly, I attempted to clarify the misunderstanding. Sweetheart, Grandma and Grandpa aren't moving in with us. Perhaps they were just curious if we have a guest room for them when they visit, I reassured her, hoping to dispel any confusion. From that day onward, my in-laws' visits became more frequent, encroaching even on weeknights and holidays. Currently residing in a modest apartment to save for our future home, their presence always seemed to revolve around our plans and aspirations. Whenever they arrived, my husband eagerly presented them with the blueprints and documents detailing our dream house, his enthusiasm unwavering despite my reservations. Why do you always have to show them? His question, tinged with disappointment, left me feeling guilty. But it was my mother-in-law who truly put me on edge. Her inquiries felt akin to an interrogation, each query delivered with the weight of judgment. This design for the kitchen seems impractical. You should reconsider. And we need more tatami rooms. They're essential for comfort as we age. Also, one child's room won't suffice if you plan to expand your family. Have you thought about the declining birth rate? Her words pierced through me like accusations in a courtroom. Wow, definitely not the declining birth rate part, I interjected, unable to suppress my frustration. She couldn't care less about that. She was waiting for my response, Adeline. Well, given our prior discussions and the arrangements made with our contractor, the layout is already finalized based on our family's needs, I retorted, my tone laced with annoyance. But what about the furniture? Appliances? She pressed further, her role as a self-proclaimed interior designer evident in her relentless scrutiny. Drawing on my experiences and observations, I defended our choices. I've seen plenty of homes and rooms through my extensive network and discerning eye. This house, this room, doesn't meet your standards, but it's what works for us. Things aren't perfect, but we're doing our best, I countered, frustration simmering beneath the surface. Attempting to diffuse the tension with a hint of sarcasm, I suggested, maybe we should split the costs and make it a two-family house, since you seem to have so much input. Her reaction was explosive. Give money to our son and daughter-in-law. You're a gold digger. A two-family house. Ridiculous. With emotions running high, my in-laws left abruptly, their departure marked by bitter words exchanged in the heat of the moment. Go home. You're not my parents. You're my in-laws. I don't owe you anything. Stop acting like my bosses. I finally snapped, the weight of their intrusion too much to bear. Later that evening, after tucking our daughter into bed, my husband approached me with a weary tone. My parents are just trying to help. Try not to shut them out, he urged, a hint of exasperation in his voice. I'm not trying to shut them out, but they meddle in every aspect of our home. They always push us into corners. They treat us like puppets and mock our decisions, I rebutted, frustration seeping into my words. It's natural. They're parents. Just think about how you'd feel if it were our daughter, he reasoned, his tone softening. You know I'm not always the most compassionate person, but they need to understand boundaries, I retorted, feeling the weight of his dismissal. With his back turned to me, he fell silent, unwilling to engage further. While they may be your parents, they're not part of our household. They don't contribute financially, so they don't get to dictate, I asserted, my anger mounting at his unreasonable stance, making sleep elusive that night. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, our home was complete. Excitement filled the air as we settled into our new abode. Yet my husband's revelation shattered the tranquility. My parents are moving in today. They'll take the larger room on the second floor, and we'll take the smaller one, he declared casually. What? Hold on. We agreed one of those rooms would be Sarah's. I never agreed to living together. None of this was discussed, I protested, incredulity coloring my voice. They've already seen the room. Don't worry, they'll like it, he assured me, his nonchalant tone aggravating my frustration. Your parents have seen it too. When? I queried, my bewilderment palpable. The day before we went to see the house, he admitted casually. Wait a minute, so let me get this straight. Your parents visited the house before we did? I pressed, struggling to comprehend. Yeah, they wanted to take a look, so I gave them my key. What harm could it do? It's not like they damaged anything, he replied, his tone dismissive as he returned to wiring the TV. What harm? It's a big deal, I snapped, avoiding eye contact as I abandoned the kitchen and retreated upstairs. Locking the door behind me, I sought solace in solitude, my mind a tumult of frustration and confusion. Grateful for the distraction of tidying up after the move, I stewed in resentment toward my husband and in-laws, especially given their sudden decision to move in with us. I can't stand being around them for another minute, but we've just made a huge investment in this house. I need to keep calm, think about what I say, and consider my daughters and my future, I resolved, sequestering myself in contemplation as I awaited their arrival. True to my husband's word, they appeared early in the afternoon, unloading their belongings from a truck. They could at least greet us. They have no sense of decency. And look at this mess. You haven't even cleaned up yet. You're utterly useless, my mother-in-law criticized, her words stinging with disdain. After much grumbling, my in-laws barged into our freshly constructed home, acting as if they were entitled to do so. Eavesdropping on the commotion from upstairs, I emerged from my room and made my way to the front door. I wasn't aware that we'd be sharing our home with you as well, I stated resignedly, my tone unexpectedly icy. My father-in-law, clearly irked by my tone, wasted no time in shifting the blame onto me. I mentioned to Yuri that it shouldn't be an issue, didn't I? But it is an issue. I only found out this morning from Yuri that he invited you both to live with us, and I have no desire to reside with such disrespectful individuals, I asserted firmly. Whatever Yuri decides is fine. Are you implying you can defy your husband? He retorted. Yes, I am. Are you suggesting I'm an impertinent wife? If you don't like it, why don't you just leave? I knew this was futile. The clash in perspectives has been apparent for some time now, rendering communication impossible with these individuals. I mused silently, contemplating my next move. Before I could form a response, my husband burst in, his expression fraught with panic. Adeline, what are you doing? Don't argue with my parents. Argue? There's no parity here. I've been subjected to unilateral mistreatment simply because I'm your wife, and now you're blaming me again. Like father, like son, it seems, Yuri, I retorted sharply. I can't live with your parents, I stated firmly. Don't embarrass me. You're my wife. You're supposed to obey me, he insisted. I'm a person before I am your wife. You can't expect blind obedience, I countered, my resolve unwavering. Listening in, my father-in-law interjected angrily. I won't accept that kind of wife for you. I won't allow her in my house, he declared vehemently. To my astonishment, my husband echoed his sentiments. Being my wife takes precedence. If you can't tend to my parents, perhaps we should consider divorce. I agree with my father, my husband affirmed. Understood. Then let's proceed with a divorce, I declared resolutely, the weight of my decision hanging heavy in the air. Even as I spoke, I silently prayed that my smartphone, nestled in my pocket, was recording every word exchanged. As the reality of our impending separation sank in, my in-laws reacted with incredulity. If we're to become strangers, then return the $259,778.88 loan I provided for the house construction immediately, they demanded, their shock palpable. My husband paled at their words, his expression one of sheer horror. Calmly, I addressed the confusion. There appears to be a misunderstanding. Yuri didn't contribute a cent to the house. It was solely funded by my savings because he had none. Despite our agreement to split expenses evenly and save the surplus, he squandered money without saving a dime, I explained, laying bare the truth for my bewildered in-laws to comprehend. Oh, come on, Adeline, you can't do this, my husband exclaimed, disbelief etched on his face. It's the truth. When it came to buying the house, he wouldn't budge. He'd insisted it be in my name. That's why I loaned you the money, remember? I have a signed AU, so you can't deny it, I asserted firmly. Oh no, their expressions frozen in shock. I swiftly packed my suitcase and overnight bag, filling them with essentials, clothes, and my daughter's treasured toys, ensuring her favorite penguin was securely tucked under my arm. Loading everything into my Mini Cooper, I wasted no time starting the engine. With a heavy heart, I bid farewell to the house I had only just begun to call home. Hastily collecting my daughter from daycare, I sped toward my parents' house. Their surprise at my sudden appearance, clad in sweatpants and laden with luggage, was evident. If this is inconvenient or too sudden, I can stay at a hotel, I offered tentatively, but they quickly intervened, urging me to stay. I sensed their determination to shield me from harm. Sharing my plight with them, I explained my decision to leave my husband, who had nothing but scorn for me, and expressed my desire to provide a stable environment for my daughter. They pledged their full support and generously offered me a place to stay. Despite my employment, it was a lifeline I gratefully accepted, knowing I had allies in my corner. That evening, I meticulously documented every detail of my tumultuous interactions with my husband and in-laws. Saving audio recordings from my phone onto my computer and external drives, I diligently compiled evidence. Utilizing my paid time and weekends, I visited numerous lawyers, determined to find one I could trust. Eventually, I found a legal representative whom I felt confident in and submitted a formal request. My days were consumed by these tasks, and before I knew it, a week had flown by. Since the day I fled our once beautiful home, I'd been avoiding my husband, but one evening, as I left the office, he was waiting for me, though I wished to label him as my ex-husband. Until the divorce proceedings concluded, he remained my spouse in legal terms. With little to say to him, I suggested we find a public space for a conversation to avoid any potential outbursts. Ever cautious, I discreetly activated the recording function on my phone before we entered a nearby coffee shop. Is there something you want to discuss? I asked him calmly, steeling myself for whatever response he might offer. Well, it's about the house. I want you to have it, Adeline. I'll remove my name from the lease. Can't we just forget about the money? He proposed, his tone tentative. I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't bear to live in that house anymore. Your parents, they were the first to set foot in it, weren't they? I stated firmly. Why does that matter? He countered. It matters to me, so I can't, I reiterated. Taking a sip of coffee, I scrutinized my soon-to-be ex-husband. His disheveled appearance spoke volumes, unkempt hair, stubble on his chin, and a worn-out complexion. Despite his suit, his shirt looked neglected, lacking the care of ironing or dry cleaning. I couldn't help but wonder how he was coping, but fatigue etched across his face told its own story. Adeline, please, I can't repay such a substantial sum so easily, he pleaded. You were aware of the amount. I even suggested we share ownership of the house, despite it being mine. But you refused to compromise, I reminded him. I thought it would be more like being landlords, and I didn't realize you were serious about the divorce. I thought it was just a threat, he confessed, desperation evident in his voice. I am serious. I won't tolerate such disrespectful parents sticking around, I declared resolutely. Oh no, he murmured, realization dawning upon him. I need to go. Sarah is waiting for me, I asserted, my unease palpable. I'll leave when you're finished. I'm going to take care of Sarah, my ex-husband countered, his words sending a shiver down my spine. Hastily, I retreated to my parents' house, urging them to be vigilant against any attempts to forcibly take Sarah. A few days later, a call from the daycare center sent me into a panic. A couple resembling my in-laws had appeared, attempting to collect Sarah. Racing to the daycare, I arrived just in time, thankfully having alerted the staff beforehand. They had kept my in-laws confined to a separate room, denying them access to Sarah. Yet upon my arrival, I was met with a barrage of accusations. Give me back my grandchild, you thieving cat, my mother-in-law bellowed. I'm not a thief, I retorted indignantly. If you're not a thief, you're a fraud. If you're not a thief, you're a swindler. Otherwise, how could you have amassed so much money at your age? She accused, her words laced with venom. No, all the money I lent to Yuri was my own. It's rightfully mine, a combination of my personal earnings, contributions from my parents, and a gift from my late grandmother, I clarified. A gift? My mother-in-law echoed incredulously. Why didn't you think to gift our son before your grandmother passed away? You could still do it now, couldn't you? She pressed. Caught off guard, my father-in-law let out a grunt before falling silent. My in-laws were ostentatious, valuing luxury above all else. Coming from a modest background, they lacked substantial savings or the inclination to gift large sums during their lifetime. I'm sorry, but Yuri and I are divorcing. I'll be taking custody of Sarah and raising her alone. Please refrain from visiting the daycare. It's disruptive, I informed them firmly. With that, I hurriedly ushered Sarah into the car and returned to my parents' home. Despite my warnings, Yuri and his parents persisted in their visits. Each encounter was fraught with tension, with verbal abuse and attempts to physically restrain me becoming commonplace. I recorded every instance on my phone. About a month after my abrupt departure from our new home, I instructed my lawyer to request repayment of the debt and initiate divorce proceedings. While my ex-husband initially hesitated, particularly regarding custody arrangements for Sarah, a stern reminder of potential alimony charges for contesting the matter seemed to quell his resistance. Armed with ample evidence and facing a lack of savings on their part, I pursued the repayment of owed funds and secured custody of Sarah through the divorce proceedings. It was a lengthy process, exacerbated by complications in selling the house. Initially intended for Yuri and my in-laws, financial constraints forced them to list the property for sale at a loss. After numerous price reductions, a buyer was eventually found, but the sale proceeds were insufficient to cover the initial purchase price and associated costs. Resorting to bank loans to bridge the gap, my ex-husband found himself burdened with debt and without a home, forced to return to his parents' cramped residence. Adding to their woes, Yuri's sister, also divorced, moved back in with her 2 teenage sons, exacerbating tensions in the already crowded household. The resulting chaos and constant bickering became a notorious feature of the neighborhood. With their financial struggles hindering their ability to provide adequate child support, the courts intervened to limit their visitation rights. Thus, the tumultuous family no longer posed a threat to her peace of mind. 4 years have elapsed since those tumultuous times, and Sarah, now in the second grade, brings joy to our lives every day. We reside in a rented space close to my parents' home, where their support provides solace, especially on days when work keeps me late. The thought of continuing to raise Sarah with their assistance, sans remarriage, had crossed my mind. Yet unexpectedly, romance found me. I've been seeing a 36-year-old divorced man with a first-grade daughter, whom I often encountered during daycare drop-offs and pickups. Our casual conversations gradually blossomed into something deeper, culminating in his heartfelt confession of affection. Recently, we've been enjoying outings together, our daughters forming a natural bond during playdates. During one such outing, Sarah innocently voiced her dream of a future home where each of us would have our own space, along with a beloved family pet. Her words stirred something within me, igniting a flurry of emotions. With a proposal lingering in the air, I stand at a crossroads. Carefully considering my daughter's welfare and my own desires, I realize my heart has already made its decision. I gather Sarah in my arms, her innocence a beacon of hope, and declare, yes, I do want to build another home. But this time, let's do it together as a family, ensuring everyone's happiness. My name is Ashley, and at 27, I found myself navigating the dynamics of a family business intertwined with marriage. Growing up, I was the sole focus of my calm, skeptical father and my vivacious, spirited mother. Their union was a harmonious blend of energies, though mom's exuberance could sometimes be overwhelming. When I married Son, whom I met through a friend, I hoped for a marriage akin to the vibrant one my parents shared. Son's family owned a renowned French restaurant chain in New York City, contrasting with my family's more modest ventures in the food industry. While dating, Son's tales of restaurant life and ambitions were captivating. However, after marriage, I grew weary of the constant comparisons between our family businesses. The discrepancy in our family's businesses became a sore point. Son's family's restaurant empire seemed to overshadow our modest endeavors. Arguments ensued, with Son and his family viewing their success as solely their own achievement, ignoring the significant contributions of Todd, Son's cousin, who had been taken in by their family after being orphaned. Todd, often referred to as a brother by Son but treated more like a servant, played a crucial role in the success of the family business. Yet he was overlooked and underappreciated. My mother-in-law, burdened by the knowledge of Todd's situation, expressed her concerns to me, unable to openly confront her husband and son. Despite their essential roles in the business, Todd and my mother-in-law remained humble and kind. Todd's competence and my mother-in-law's wisdom were evident, yet they were forced to operate under the shadow of Son's incompetence and his father's arrogance. Son's ineptitude in managing the business contrasted sharply with Todd's skillful handling of day-to-day operations. Employees respected Todd, often resisting Son's unreasonable demands. Behind the scenes, Todd and my mother-in-law worked tirelessly to salvage the business while, during a visit to my hometown, I found myself sharing my marital woes with my parents over a comforting bowl of potato soup. My mother, sipping her soup with gusto, didn't mince words. Ashley, just get a divorce and come home. My father, though wearing a bitter smile at her bluntness, remained silent. It was too soon to entertain the idea of divorce. After all, we hadn't even been married for 6 months. Disappointed in both Judson, my husband, and my father-in-law, I found solace in the kindness of my mother-in-law and Todd. I can't just easily get a divorce, I replied with a wry smile, knowing the complexities of my situation. But my mother, undeterred, suggested I leave Judson and join them at their pizza shop. I protested vehemently, while my father, ever the gentle soul, inquired about my troubles. As I poured out my frustrations about Judson's dismissive attitude towards me and his unwarranted suspicions of my relationship with Todd, my mother-in-law shared some revealing insights. She recounted a past incident where Judson, driven by his insecurity and rivalry with Todd, unjustly fired a female employee who had garnered Todd's admiration. My mother's animated nature, a trait she had carried since childhood, provided a welcome distraction from my troubles. I reminisced about how her vivacious personality had initially intimidated potential suitors until my father, drawn to her energy, had become her steadfast partner. Their love story, peppered with anecdotes of youthful charm, lifted my spirits. As we sat together, conversing warmly, I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos of my marriage. My parents' unwavering support and my mother's infectious spirit reminded me that, despite the challenges, there was still light to be found in the darkness. I recalled an important matter and asked if I could bring Judson, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, and Todd to my parents' home. It would be their first visit to my childhood home, and my mother-in-law eagerly expressed her desire to reconnect with my parents. Judson reluctantly agreed, and to my surprise, Todd, showing interest in making pizza, volunteered to join us. I suspected he wanted to ensure Judson behaved himself. My parents gladly agreed, excited to showcase the deliciousness of our pizzas. Mom, perhaps a bit too enthusiastic, exclaimed, "Of course. We'll make them realize how delicious our pizza is." I chuckled, knowing her excitement could sometimes be overwhelming. So we found ourselves at my parents' pizza shop, unaware of the brewing tension ahead. Todd, usually the peacemaker, was ready for any storm that Judson might brew. The moment Judson laid eyes on the quaint pizza shop, he couldn't help but sneer. "Still as old-fashioned as ever," he remarked, fortunate that my mother wasn't there to hear his comment. Knowing her fiery spirit, she might have banned him from the shop on the spot. Ignoring his snide remark, I led everyone inside. Mom greeted them cheerfully, welcoming them warmly. "Long time no see, Judson. Ashley has told me a lot about you," she said, her words laced with sarcasm that Judson seemed to miss entirely, much to Todd's subtle amusement. As Mom continued with her warm greetings, she turned to Todd, remarking on his appearance. "You're Todd, right? So tall and handsome. You look like a model," she exclaimed, overwhelming Todd, who offered a puzzled smile in response. Politely, he thanked her and joined the rest of the group. Meanwhile, Dad was busy preparing pizzas while Mom attempted to serve some drinks and popular side dishes. Judson, however, couldn't resist making a disparaging remark, commenting on the shop's appearance. "Build the store on your mother's old and dirty," he scoffed, displaying his usual lack of tact. My emotions churned with a mix of anger and apprehension as I watched my mother prepare drinks right in front of me. I couldn't bring myself to meet her gaze, so consumed was I by fear. Then, amidst the tension, a menacing voice sliced through the air, demanding a repetition of an earlier remark. My usually cheerful mother's tone dripped with quiet fury, sending shivers down my spine. Despite attempts from my mother-in-law and Todd to intervene, my father-in-law brazenly echoed his disrespectful sentiment, deeming both the shop and its proprietor unfit, even suggesting the risk of food poisoning. My mother, seething with rage, abandoned the drinks and retrieved a 1-liter bottle of wine, her demeanor sharp as she confronted my father-in-law, warning him of dire consequences if he continued his insults. Startled by her forcefulness, he attempted one last jab at her appearance before my mother, fueled by indignation, made a move to retaliate. With a swift intervention from my father, disaster was narrowly averted, but the damage had been done. My father-in-law and Judson, sneering in disdain, exited the shop, leaving a cloud of tension in their wake. Despite my mother's impulse to pursue them, my father and I held her back, struggling to contain her fury. Amidst the chaos, my mother-in-law and Todd offered profuse apologies, though I knew the fault lay not with them but with the condescending attitudes of my father-in-law and Judson. Their callous remarks had ignited the conflict, leaving me seething with anger and hurt. Recognizing my turmoil, my mother-in-law addressed me, expressing regret and suggesting divorce as a viable option for my well-being. Todd, in his quiet manner, echoed her sentiment, recognizing the pattern of such incidents. As I wrestled with conflicting emotions, torn between loyalty to my family and the turmoil within my marriage, the regretful expressions on my mother-in-law and Todd's faces mirrored my own internal struggle. Contemplating divorce, I couldn't shake the guilt I felt for my mother-in-law and Todd. As my father and I struggled with what to do next, my mother cut through the tension with her blunt observation, "You two don't seem happy, especially Todd. You can leave whenever you want, right?" Her direct question caught Todd off guard. He confessed his concern for his aunt, unable to abandon her despite his disdain for my father-in-law and Judson. It was his loyalty to my mother-in-law and his sense of duty toward the other employees that held him back. My mother-in-law, overwhelmed by Todd's true feelings, broke down in tears, burdened by guilt for holding him back. Feeling lost, my father and I exchanged confused glances, unsure of how to proceed. But then, my mother's cheerful laughter cut through the tension. "Ha, that's easy. Leave it to me," she declared, surprising us all. With newfound determination, I made up my mind. After discussing our plans for the future, I returned home to face Judson. Straightforwardly, I announced my decision to sever ties with his family, unable to forgive my father-in-law's hurtful words. Judson's scornful laughter in response only fueled my resolve. I handed him the divorce papers I had prepared, issuing a final warning. "Don't come crying to me after our divorce," I cautioned, but Judson, unable to comprehend the gravity of the situation, remained indifferent. As our marriage dissolved, my mother-in-law and Todd were spared from the ordeal. Though my life was fraught with stress, exacerbated by my father-in-law's insensitivity, I found solace in the freedom of my newfound independence after the divorce. Upon returning to my parents' home about a month later, my ex-father-in-law and ex-husband Judson appeared, their faces drained of color. They delivered divorce papers and a curt message, claiming they were cutting ties with us. Maintaining composure, I faced my ex-father-in-law and remarked on the unfortunate timing of our late-life divorce. My laughter seemed to unnerve Judson further, who muttered about employees quitting and feeling betrayed by Todd, his supposed brother. But Todd's voice, cutting and cold, interrupted Judson's self-pity. He rejected the brotherly title Judson had bestowed upon him, revealing he had never considered Judson as such. Suddenly, Todd emerged, stunning my ex-father-in-law and Judson. Then my former mother-in-law appeared quietly from the shadows. As my ex-in-laws stood dumbfounded, my mother made a bold entrance, revealing that they had been scouted by her company and that they now owned a French restaurant. My ex-father-in-law broke into a cold sweat at this declaration, while my father, observing the scene, smiled modestly. He revealed that running the pizza shop had merely been a hobby. My wife's family owned a group of restaurants, and they had graciously accepted him as their son-in-law. At the mention of the company's name, my ex-father-in-law and Judson stumbled. Realizing the vast difference in scale between their restaurants and our company, it became clear why they had been relegated to running a pizza shop instead of being involved in the family business. Years ago, my father had suffered a collapse from overworking, prompting doctors to suggest he pursue something he enjoyed for his recovery. So my mother and I had reopened this pizza shop, which had been my late grandfather's hobby. In truth, it was all part of a ruse, allowing them to run the company smoothly in my parents' absence with the help of dedicated and skilled employees. While seemingly running the pizza shop, my parents were actually overseeing their work, earning the admiration of their staff. Under my mother's guidance, our company took control of the restaurant previously managed by my ex-father-in-law and Judson. The once complacent duo now stood stunned as my father calmly addressed them. "It's evident to me that both of you lack the necessary skills to manage your business," he declared, citing concerns voiced by employees regarding their management abilities. With a firm stance beside my father, my mother delivered a decisive message. "We're entrusting the management of the French restaurant to Todd. He has full authority over you both," she proclaimed. Ex-father-in-law and Judson protested, claiming their approval was needed, but their objections fell on deaf ears. This decision wasn't solely my parents' but also reflected the sentiments of the disgruntled employees. Now, my ex-mother-in-law would support Todd, her nephew, in a supervisory role. Todd and my ex-mother-in-law shared a glance, and with calm determination, Todd expressed his gratitude for their support before revealing his true feelings. "While I owe you for taking me in as a child," Todd began, his voice turning icy, "my grudge against Judson is immeasurable. For him, it's even greater." His declaration left no room for forgiveness or mercy, stripping my ex-father-in-law and Judson of all managerial authority. Todd's cold resolve was clear. Then my ex-mother-in-law delivered a final blow, leaving my ex-father-in-law and Judson reeling. Upon returning to my parents' home about a month later, my ex-father-in-law and ex-husband Judson appeared, their faces drained of color. They delivered divorce papers and a curt message, claiming they were cutting ties with us. Maintaining composure, I faced my ex-father-in-law and remarked on the unfortunate timing of our late-life divorce. My laughter seemed to unnerve Judson further, who muttered about employees quitting and feeling betrayed by Todd, his supposed brother. But Todd's voice, cutting and cold, interrupted Judson's self-pity. He rejected the brotherly title Judson had bestowed upon him, revealing he had never considered Judson as such. Suddenly, Todd emerged, stunning my ex-father-in-law and Judson. Then my former mother-in-law appeared quietly from the shadows. As my ex-in-laws stood dumbfounded, my mother made a bold entrance, revealing that they had been scouted by her company and that they now owned the French restaurant. My ex-father-in-law broke into a cold sweat at this declaration, while my father, observing the scene, smiled modestly. He revealed that running the pizza shop had merely been a hobby. My wife's family owned a group of restaurants, and they had graciously accepted him as their son-in-law. At the mention of the company's name, my ex-father-in-law and Judson stumbled, realizing the vast difference in scale between their restaurants and our company. It became clear why they had been relegated to running a pizza shop instead of being involved in the family business. Years ago, my father had suffered a collapse from overworking, prompting doctors to suggest he pursue something he enjoyed for his recovery. So my mother and I had reopened this pizza shop, which had been my late grandfather's hobby. In truth, it was all part of a ruse, allowing them to run the company smoothly in my parents' absence with the help of dedicated and skilled employees.